In July 2026, Volkswagen's supervisory board began discussing a major restructuring plan, cutting 100,000 jobs from its global workforce of 657,000 and closing 4 factories in Germany. The proposal is nearly twice the scale of the workforce reduction plan the company agreed upon in 2024. That same week, another German company, Rheinmetall, delivered a very different message to its shareholders. Since 2022, its share price has risen by more than 700%, its order backlog has exceeded 50 billion euros, and the company plans to triple its workforce over the next 3 years, reaching 70,000 employees, the same country, the same month. In this video, we will uncover the actual mechanism, how 3 causes reinforce each other, and why Germany is experiencing 2 completely different industrial fates at the same time. First, let's look at the bigger picture, because this is not just Volkswagen's story. In April 2026, the seasonally adjusted number of unemployed people in Germany crossed the 3 million mark for the first time in 15 years, with the unemployment rate hitting 6.4%. This is no ordinary figure for Germany, a country that for decades was considered one of Europe's...
Let's analyze the loss of competitiveness. Industry overall shows a 25% loss. The automotive sector reflects a higher loss at 38%.
Economies with the lowest unemployment rates. According to estimates by the consulting firm EY, German industry is losing an average of over 10,000 jobs every month. Since February 2022, industrial production has shrunk by nearly 10%, a figure that exceeds 15% in energy-intensive sectors. The automotive sector is taking the hardest hit. The German Association of the Automotive Industry projects that a total of 225,000 jobs will disappear in the sector by 2035, 35,000 more than previously forecast. Bosch is already planning to cut 22,000 jobs by 2030, but make no mistake, this decline is not confined to the automotive sector. According to a survey by the IFO Institute, 25% of German industrial companies report losing competitiveness in markets outside the European Union. In the automotive sector, this figure climbs to 38%. Clearly, the issue is not about a single company or sector. This is a systemic decline.
Reason 1. The energy crisis. The biggest problem facing German industry is energy. For decades, the country's industry relied on cheap Russian gas. However, with the start of the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022 and the damage to the pipelines, this system collapsed overnight. Germany had to quickly switch to much more expensive alternatives, such as liquefied natural gas, Erdgas. At the same time, the government accelerated its transition to green energy. Nuclear power plants were shut down and steps were taken to phase out coal. While this transition makes sense in theory, the timing was disastrous. As a result, energy prices hit record highs right during this massive transformation. Key impacts: production drop. Since February 2022, production in energy-intensive sectors like chemicals, metallurgy, and glassmaking has fallen by more than 15%. Loss of competitiveness. Energy in Germany is now vastly more expensive than in the US or China. Ultimately, this is not just a story of bad policy, it is the direct, measurable cost of a geopolitical shock to the industry.
Reason 2 is the sheer scale. Chinese competition is reshaping the global economy. To survive, we must innovate, because to overcome is coming.
The second reason is Chinese competition, but let's look closely because the usual explanation is incomplete. For decades, Germany's model was simple: manufacture high-tech, high-quality products and sell them to the world, especially to China. For a long time, this worked. However, in recent years, the balance has shifted. For the first time in decades, Germany has started importing more high-tech industrial equipment from China than it exports to it. The reason for this isn't just that China is cheap. China has now closed the quality gap as well. The German Mechanical Engineering Industry Association, VDMA, states that Chinese manufacturers now control about a third of global machinery production, and reaching a market share of 40 to 50% is a critical threshold for European industry. More than three-quarters of German engineering companies view Chinese competition as their #1 global strategic challenge. The result, German companies are increasingly moving their production to China, not because China is cheap, but because that is where the customer is. Industry leaders explain this with simple logic. If the market is in Asia, the factory must move closer to it. But here is the real question, which very few channels ask. Why specifically now? China has been manufacturing for 20 years. The answer is simple. 20 years ago, China competed with cheap labor. Today, it competes with technology and quality. This is a different kind of competition, and Germany's old advantage, the "we build it better" argument, no longer works automatically. Reason 3, the domestic system, self-inflicted roadblocks. The third reason, most emphasized by industrial associations but least covered in media headlines, is Germany's own domestic system. Industry representatives repeatedly point to the same internal culprits: suffocating bureaucracy, a crushing tax burden, and agonizingly slow regulatory processes. The head of surveys at the IFO Institute noted that such a sharp, rapid decline in international competitiveness is unprecedented, leaving German industry facing monumental challenges just to survive. In response, the German government approved a massive €500 billion infrastructure investment program. However, economists issue a stark warning: throwing money at the problem without deep structural reforms is useless. If regulation remains sluggish and the tax system remains heavy, new funding will only temporarily mask deep-rooted systemic issues. The perfect storm. This highlights how these three crises reinforce one another, creating a devastating compound effect. Expensive energy could have been managed on its own. Chinese competition could have been countered on its own. Slow bureaucracy could have been endured on its own. The war industry paradox. But here is the most remarkable part: not every sector is sinking. Some are experiencing the fastest growth in history. Since the Russia-Ukraine war, Germany has been executing its largest military rebuilding program since World War II. The government plans to virtually double its annual defense budget, aiming to reach approximately €162 billion by 2029. The impact is clear. Over the past 4 years, the combined workforce of Germany's 5 largest defense companies and its 4 fastest-growing startups has surged from 63,000 to 83,000, an increase of nearly 30%. Rheinmetall alone has expanded its workforce from 15,000 to 23,000 since 2021, with a target to reach 70,000 within 3 years. The company expects a staggering 300,000 job applications this year alone. The talent shift, a drop in the ocean. The fascinating twist lies here. Some defense companies are now actively headhunting talent from the struggling automotive sector. For instance, radar manufacturers like Hensoldt
Welcome aboard.
are recruiting
Report to
engineers
line
from
4.
auto giants like Bosch and Continental.
Watch out for the forklift!
However, looking at the data, this transition is still minor. Only about 100 automotive workers secured jobs this way this year.
Sure, go ahead.
Compared to the planned
is it?
100,000
The Q2
layoffs
metrics.
in the auto industry, this is a mere drop in the ocean, a new economic reality. This is not a random trend, it is the economic reflection of Europe. Thus, the fate of German industry cannot be explained in just a single sentence. It is the intersection of 3 forces: the energy shock, the changing nature of Chinese competition, and Germany's own structural inertia, all unfolding at a time when Europe is drifting toward a war economy. This does not mean the collapse of Germany. Rather, it is the transformation of one industrial model into another, a transition that is painful, uneven, and whose outcome remains highly uncertain. The industrial giant of the old continent is now stepping onto an entirely new and precarious path. For an engineer who has spent 30 years working in an automotive plant, statistics showing that the national economy is growing offer little comfort if their own industry is crumbling. This transition is rewriting not just the future of factories, but the destinies of millions of people. What lies ahead? The key question remains: will this become Europe's new normal, or is it just a transient phase? Do you believe Germany can reclaim its former industrial dominance, Or is this the beginning of an irreversible shift? We will explore this in our next video by comparing Germany's situation with similar transformations currently taking place in France and Italy,